All right, gang, we're going to get started here in just a few seconds. We'll give a chance to make sure everyone can get logged in. All right, it is high noon here on the East Coast. Thanks for everybody for joining, and welcome to the March edition of RapidScale, a Cox business company, in our cloud-empowered series. We're here, we're talking about SD-WAN today, and I've got some great folks joining me, none other than our CEO and General Manager, Mr. Dwayne Barnes, and VMware's Senior Product Marketing Manager, Michael Leonard. As always, just a couple house cleaning items. The session is being recorded. Please feel free to enter any of your questions via chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can when the session finishes up. And we will send out, if we can't get to your question, what we will do is we'll send out a recording of the entire video and session along with the questions that we did answer and the ones that we didn't answer. So with that being said, let's kind of get into it here. Just so you know, that was the reminders there. So within 24 hours, we'll send those out. So 2020 snapshot. Gosh, I can't believe it's almost April. I mean, where did we? But a quick reminder of if we were to look over the rearview mirror here, look over our shoulder. Desktop as a service. You know, I think we're really known for that in the space. 56% year-over-year revenue growth. Very, very proud of that. Microsoft 365, we have set the stage here to be an absolute leader in the space as well. 137% revenue growth. We've got a great story. But what I'm really, why we're doing this here today about SD-WAN is, I think what most of you are going to find surprising, SD-WAN growth in 2020, 130% year-over-year revenue growth in one of VMware's top 4 providers nationwide. I mean, Dwayne, bringing you into the discussion, I mean, what is going on? How are we selling so much SD-WAN? You probably should be asking me that, right, as the sales guy, but I'm asking you, what's actually happening here?
Yeah, I mean, great question. You know, I think when you noted at the beginning that we're kind of known for the desktop as a service, and I would kind of extrapolate that as really the application, you know, acceleration and giving a business's employees the ability to access their apps from anywhere, anytime, on any device. Well, a key component of that is the network, right? And how do we give them an exceptional experience, you know, from a headquarters or a branch or even at home? And the best way to do that is SD-WAN, and obviously the best SD-WAN technology out there is based on VMware's VeloCloud platform.
Yeah, and you know, that's a great segue. You know, I think our partners out there are saying, well, there's so many SD-WAN providers. Why would I do this with RapidScale, right? And you know, we consider ourselves, you know, folks use the word MSP. We kind of think of CSP, the managed service provider versus the cloud service provider, and we kind of fit in that category. And you know, there's an interesting comment here at the bottom. SD-WAN managed services are forecasted to grow at a pace of 70% through 2025, and there's a lot of great options out there, including the traditional telecommunication companies who offer SD-WAN. And they offer it obviously as a complement and to augment their core network services. But Michael, what are you seeing as far as a company like RapidScale and certainly the managed service providers' role and really the opportunity in this market?
Well, at VMware, we see service providers like RapidScale as a major, venue going into market. We are seeing about 60% or more of our sales coming from companies like RapidScale, and we're having, we sell directly, but we have a lot of customers that come to us. And they want the kind of things you're talking about. They want consulting services where they get the right setup. They want to tie to applications like your desktop as a service. They don't really want to have to put out the upfront cost, you know, so they're looking for someone just to come in and make it as a service for them. And they really like the fact that they've got one place to call to get things taken care of. So I would say that, you know, we're really anticipating doing a lot more business with RapidScale and companies like RapidScale in the coming year.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. As we think as we think about losing control of my deck here. Sorry, guys. As we think about why is this, like what's really happening, and we ask ourselves internally what's going on, it leads us back to some common denominators across our entire product portfolio. And this is where RapidScale is really different than some of the other cloud companies. And if you're a partner out there and you're thinking, well, you know, these guys do infrastructure, these guys do desktop, they're in Microsoft 365. I'll tell you, we judge ourselves by the end user experience, and there's not many companies out there in our cohort that can say that. And Dwayne, you know what? I mean, this is a simplistic picture, but I love it. Our marketing team does such a great job. But instead of just talking about speeds and feeds, I mean, think about the DNA of the teams that you support here at RapidScale. Our operations, our support teams, our engineering teams. I mean, they are always focused on the end user and the end user in mind and what that experiences look like. How's that complement, or really maybe complement isn't the best word, but how's that relevant to the SD-WAN market?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, early in RapidScale's days, you know, obviously we didn't have an SD-WAN offering, and you know, as the technology evolved and as more of our channel partners out in the field were quoting and selling it to their you know, customer base, occasionally that would overlap with a RapidScale customer. And what we quickly realized was, you know, customers were buying services from other SD-WAN providers that actually weren't complementary to RapidScale's ability to provide a you know, world-class customer experience. You know, they'd be routing traffic halfway across the country to get back to our data centers. It would increase latency, not improve latency. And frankly, a lot of those, you know, what I would call pure play SD-WAN providers cared more about getting the boxes turned up into billing more than consulting with the customer on the back end of, hey, what's behind the box? What does your wireless infrastructure look like? What does your desktop infrastructure look like? What does your what applications are on-prem versus in a data center versus in the cloud, and really how to consult with that business to make sure that they didn't just improve the resiliency of the network, but they actually improved their application performance. So we get those types of calls all the time.
And what you're touching on is like, and it's not just our sales partners. By the way, our internal sellers are doing this, and we get really focused on driving the sale and meeting the customer need. And you focus on the top layer here, the table stakes, connectivity, cost savings. And by the way, those are important things. We shouldn't discard those things because they're part of the equation. But I think as we start to have deeper discussions along the lines of the LAN, the WAN, and certainly the applications, you're getting into an IT-centric discussion versus a telecom discussion. And as the previous slide dictated, you're starting to focus on business outcomes and how the end user, whether that end user is internal or external, what is their experience? So this all starts to come together from a sales standpoint to start thinking about what are the business outcomes and what's the customer trying to accomplish. I think this slide does a really good, again, simplicity wins the day, but a really good illustration of what we're talking about. Get under the surface a little bit deeper and move that conversation from really thinking about, hey, are we a telecom type advisor, or are we actually having technology discussions and moving towards a trusted advisor versus the telecom advisor? And I challenge our internal sellers to do it, and I would challenge our special partners out there to do the same thing. Because here's what happens: the benefit. If all of a sudden we're having network discussions, it turns to SD-WAN, and instead of going beyond just the telecom conversation and focusing on the applications and focusing on the end user experience, having that IT discussion, guess what's happening? You're starting to have a cloud discussion. And all of a sudden there's drag that comes along with it. So what we're really talking about here, Dwayne, is changing the conversation. And here we got a couple of bullets, you know, it's stating what I said earlier, shift from being the telecom advisor to the trusted IT advisor. Give us a little more depth here, Dwayne, on these three concepts, and from a network resiliency all the way through the end user experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think network resiliency almost speaks for itself, but I would just add some color to that. So that's not just about uptime, right? That's about, you know, making real-time decisions at the traffic level, right? At the application level of which network connection makes the most sense to send that traffic across, right? So it's not just resiliency, but it bleeds into application performance. So if someone takes 5 seconds longer to get an email, no one will ever notice. But if their Teams conference like we're on today starts buffering, the CEO is probably going to call somebody and start yelling, right? So it's really making that decision at the policy level in the appliance and the configuration to match the customer's needs, which then just boils into the end user experience, right? The end users don't necessarily know why their Teams might be buffering or why they might take a few extra seconds to save a quote in their Salesforce system, or why their medical record takes a few extra seconds to load. But that's how we dive in the pre-sales process. We have a rather lengthy questionnaire, and I know some of our channel partners have seen it, where we get really into the details about where are their users, what apps are they using. We even do trace routes and test across the wires that they have today, make improvements. Obviously, as a cloud provider and being owned by a network provider, we get into BGP discussions with peering relationships to really improve along with the SD-WAN. So, to your point, when you obviously the speeds and feeds are important, the plumbing has to be there, but when you take that conversation a step further, then you start, becoming the trusted IT advisor, not just the trusted advisor.
Yeah, and I think you guys have made a real good point. The more that you can talk to the higher level, to the care about of the companies, so things about like increasing the productivity, reducing the downtime, enabling them to use more applications in the cloud, more collaborative applications, or being able to expand their business more quickly because they got a more agile network. So I completely agree. I mean, the network's important, but the more that you can show how the network is enabling the business, you've got a better conversation going on.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Michael. If for our sales partners, and what I think is especially exciting is it's an awesome way when you get into the depth of these discussions. You're talking about the technology topology of a particular customer. Where are the applications living? You're already talking about, it's the prioritization, but where are they living? Are they internal? Are they external? Are they on another cloud platform? Are they software as a service? And it's likely a very heterogeneous, if not a few, perhaps even as many as a dozen apps. And how are the applications being accessed by the end user, which leads into security discussions. And all of a sudden that can lead into a bigger deal or upsell and cross-sell opportunities on a go-forward basis. So that's what really excites me from a sales perspective. Hey, look, this term is I think the new buzzword out there, and I think it's SASE, right? SASE. It's a joke, right? But it's definitely the new term that some people are very familiar with, and others are just hearing for the first time. But if you're playing in an SD-WAN world today, this keeps coming up more and more. And Michael, the question here for you is, how are you guys viewing SASE, and how is it relevant to VeloCloud, your offerings, and also from a security perspective? What is your message?
Well, yeah, you're definitely right talking about security, because as more and more users are using applications in the cloud, they may be breaking out traffic at the branch and going straight to the cloud. They're bypassing the firewall and the VPN in the data center. And so you've got to add security into the mix for access to those cloud applications. And this is something that at VMware we've seen, and we're building out points of presence for SASE. We call them SASE pops, if you like a term there. But anyway, we're putting in, we develop an architecture that can be replicated by, RapidScale, for example. But we're building in things like the security and making the SD-WAN part of this for directing traffic to the different services in the cloud. So I think definitely this is an important thing for people to be looking at.
So Dwayne, when we think about SASE from a RapidScale perspective, think about the pandemic and all the disruption. I mean, that's been beaten to death, but you know what? I think the opportunity from a security perspective is huge as we enter into 2020. And how does SASE play into that?
Yeah, fortunately for us, it plays right into our sweet spot, which is how do we give end user employees access securely to their applications from anywhere, anytime, on any device. And VMware is playing right into that with their SASE offerings. But you think about an end user that might be at home, for example, and doesn't have an SD-WAN appliance at home, but still needs to access the corporate network, the cloud networks, software as a service providers. There's a simple client that can be installed on a bring your own device or a device as a service offering, which will connect them back into the SD-WAN mesh and then take advantage of all the security offerings that are part of the SD-WAN network already. And that could be anything from web security to content filtering to traffic inspection, and then there's an AI engine that VMware has launched as well that'll give you a lot of intelligence as to what's happening, because SD-WAN is great, but if you're not a whiz-bang network engineer troubleshooting traffic between non SD-WAN edge locations, SD-WAN edge locations, and corporate facilities can be quite daunting. So the AI engine that VMware's developed will actually give you a great dashboard that gives you a lot of insight into what's going on in the network there.
Yeah. So well, go ahead, Michael.
Oh, I'm just going to say that's a really important point, that you can show the value to the customer through the analytics. You can also anticipate issues with the network and get the troubleshooting done before the users are complaining. So that's definitely an important aspect for us at VMware, to have the intelligence in there, to have it gathering data and providing insights to you as an operator.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is not only we already knew the application environment and especially with disruption that the cloud is bringing to market, that applications are very heterogeneous and residing on multiple platforms, all not just in the US, but perhaps globally, depending on your business. But that being said, now with the pandemic more than ever, the remote employees and accessing your crown jewels from different locations, from anywhere, any device, is just making the market opportunity and the value proposition just stronger than ever. So when we talk about, hey, why SD-WAN, most folks understand why SD-WAN. This, I think you're probably getting the gist. This isn't an education necessarily on SD-WAN. I think everyone's heard that story and is prepared to sell it. But really, kind of why through RapidScale? And I think we could probably spend an entire, if it was just you and me, we might be able to spend an entire discussion on this slide alone. But I think it does a really good job of conceptualizing and telling our story in one illustration. You've got the network, the implementation side of things, our ongoing support, and that could really be unpacked here. But I'm gonna turn this over to you and let you kind of give your get on your soapbox a little bit and tell our partners, hey, what's our secret sauce here?
Yeah, it's a great slide. It speaks pretty clearly to it. But again, I think about, let's say you're doing a 50 location SD-WAN deal with a traditional carrier or a traditional pure play provider. They're going to be really good at rolling out the boxes, getting the network stood up, and getting them online. Where they generally fall down or take a lot longer to get the services turned up is when there's problems, right? Someone can't print, the Wi-Fi is broken, they no longer have access to the corporate domain, on and on and on. And that's really what we've been doing for 15 years nearly, is supporting the end user IT environment. So layering on the network here is simple for us. So again, we have, we're fully diverse nationwide as well as in Europe and Asia. So again, we have the global presence. Our parent company has a national diverse fiber footprint. We also offer LTE backup options, so there's no stone left unturned as far as the network options there. We also offer two different types of install: self-install, which is quite popular with a lot of our customers, but we can roll a truck nationwide and be able to do that kind of white glove level physical installation. We customize the configs for our clients. So, again, we don't just put the vanilla, service profiles in there. Our SDs will ask, a lot of questions, which sometimes might be, frustrating to sales, but, we get it right out of the gate versus turning it up and having issues post install. And then we have over 100 people in support based in Raleigh and in Irvine, California. That's 24/7 US based. We don't outsource, we don't contract. And again, that's tough for a lot of our cohorts to say in the space, is you'll end up getting, call center offshore type support. We survey our customers at every single interaction, real time. We publish it on our website. That's how how it's built into our DNA. And we've averaged in 2020 several hundred surveys a month coming in at a 4.8 out of 5 from a CSAT perspective. And just to kind of zip through the last 5 boxes at the bottom, again, we'll offer co or fully managed, meaning a customer can have direct access to the orchestrator if they'd like, and they're really technical and they have an IT team that's capable of managing some of the features. We also don't stunt the features, right? Again, a lot of other providers will only support features that they've spent 6 months testing and labbing and comfortable with. Within days, sometimes a week of a new feature coming out from VMware, our guys are already running with it and enabling it in our portal for customers to use just about real time. And speaking of the portal, we're one of the few providers, even in VMware's portfolio, that have written our own portal using native VMware APIs. So a non-technical user can get a real-time view of their SD-WAN environment, their LTE, their network. We'll do advanced circuit management for the customers as well. It does not have to be a Cox circuit. We'll call out on behalf if there's circuit issues. And then probably the most important, which we've beat almost the dead horse here, is the land-side consulting, right? Is we're not just asking about how much bandwidth you need and how many locations you have, right? We're in there asking how many servers do you have? How many end users are at each location? What applications do you have? What's your security requirements? On and on and on. And we're providing a comprehensive solution that takes IT into account, and IT becomes the center of the discussion versus the speeds and feeds.
That's a phenomenal point. The thing that frustrates us, I think, the most sometimes is we get into these opportunities, and it's by the way, it's our fault. It's not our partner's fault. It's ours, because we have to do a better job of getting that message out and the education. But what are we trying to do? Is the beginning of this conversation, we said we judge ourselves on the experience of the end user, and especially as we get into a desktop opportunity, for example. And we've come to find out that maybe there's SD-WAN's being pitched in the same opportunity, but we're not being considered. But SD-WAN could be critical in how the end user accesses that desktop and the other applications that are being supported. And there's certainly keen advantages to leveraging SD-WAN through RapidScale in that scenario versus maybe going with another option. Can you expand on that just briefly?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the advantages for using SD-WAN with RapidScale, even if you're comparing, a Velo provider to another Velo provider or VMware provider, right, is, we have a full VMware stack in every data center. So it's not just SD-WAN. We're doing the hypervisor, we're doing the desktops, we're doing the NSX Edge, the security, everything is a native VMware solution. So you really get distinct advantages there, and almost every customer, mid-market and above, that you speak to is a VMware customer, right? So I think that's key. And then you can see the portal here. It's not smoke and mirrors. These are real-time statistics showing up. VMware is kind of famous for their QoE scores. So a customer that, again, you don't have to be a propeller head, right? You can be, just vaguely familiar with IT and log in here and get a really good glance at what's happening. What are the most popular applications? On this particular screenshot, you can see Netflix is one of the top talkers. So if they're having, congestion issues, it doesn't take, a brain surgeon to figure.
I think this might be your house, Dwayne.
It probably is. So we do eat our own dog food, and not only do we use the product in our offices, we also, most of us, use it at our homes as well.
So appreciate that, Dwayne. I'll tell you what, you might say, well, why RapidScale? I think that everything you've said, I think we're probably all nodding. At least I hope we are, saying, hey, that makes sense. But you know what? When we went to market and decided who we're going to partner with, we partnered with VMware, and certainly the Velo product for a reason. Michael, this is really your slide. Give us the message around your positioning with Gartner, and why are you guys the leader?
Well, it's good to be working with the winner. I chose to work, for VMware because I knew it was a leading product. They got out early into the market. They got the right feature set in there, but then they didn't sit still, right? They anticipated what was going on in the market, what the customer needs were, and they kept innovating. So And it's a unique product, you know, with the gateways that steer the traffic, make sure it stays on your network, make sure it gets straight to the cloud. You're giving high performance and reliability. With the analytics, as you showed, we're giving customers insights into the value that they're getting, and we're helping with troubleshooting, with network engineering. But then, as we mentioned with SASE, we're continuing to innovate, bringing in security, you know, bringing in things that the customers need to keep the product working for them. So I would say that's really it. You know, we have the vision and we act upon it.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. So for our partners out there, I mean, how are we uncovering these opportunities, right? And in the first bullet here is you know, that's table stakes, you know, branch locations, number of sites, number of users. But again, what are the apps? And an app could be, you know, as simple as Teams, you know, Microsoft 365. Could be more proprietary type applications. Where do they live, and what's being accessed across the WAN into the branch sites? What are the most 3 critical apps is certainly a good question. There could be a lot more than that, but just starting there, right? If these were not accessible by the users, what are the consequences, and how does it impact the business outcome, right? Do you intend to install or use pro install services? Dwayne mentioned that a little bit in our message there. Do you have a need for visibility and control over applications and websites? Is another good one. But who's a good fit, right? I think everyone probably understands this one. I mean, it's a little bit, you know, probably a little bit more of the captain obvious for the educated folks on the call. But hey, you know, the one that really speaks to me is, again, deploying desktop as a service. We can compete very, very well, and we're winning deal after deal after deal, competing where there's no other services that are attached to the initial opportunity, where we're coming back in and partnering and getting this cross sell and upsell type chances with the client. But on the front end, if there is a desktop deal, we're looking for ways to optimize the customer experience, and it complements our broader portfolio very, very well. So if there's a cloud strategy that's actually occurring, how does SD-WAN fit into that, right? So if you're looking to learn more, you can leverage the Technology Leadership Academy, or we discuss as or reference as the TLA. You know, co-brand material, videos, you know, some selling 101 and 201 type messaging. You can also leverage, obviously, your cloud solutions consultant that's in market. We'll be happy to sit down with you one-on-one. We'll be happy to give your entire team a much more in-depth content and training that's specific to SD-WAN and RapidScale's value proposition. And we can customize that and customize the messaging, certainly. So at this point in time, we will kind of get to the question section, and got a few minutes to take a few. Nikki, are you out there? We got any questions?
Yeah, we have a few. Can you walk us through the process if a device is down or fails?
Hey, Dwayne, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, sure. So there's a lot of options. So again, with consulting on the front end, we try to find the need from the client, right? So we can deploy them in fully HA mode. So we have 2 appliances, you know, separate, you know, network switches, separate power, all that sort of stuff. We can also do very low cost on-site spares. And then lastly, you know, we have a range of from next business day to, you know, 4-hour replacement, depending on the customer's, you know, requirements.
Thank you.
Awesome. One more question. So you gave us questions to uncover an SD-WAN opportunity, but how might I leverage that and turn it into additional cloud opportunities, and how do I start that conversation?
Yeah, we touched on that maybe briefly, and I think there's an opportunity to really unpack that. I think it's a great question. I think, and I hope I don't sound like it's just repetitive, and it might be, but as you're getting into these SD-WAN discussions, if we challenge ourselves to try and just change the conversation from a network discussion or a telecom discussion to an IT discussion, and what that means is, you know, what's actually living, you know, behind the firewall, if you will, for simplicity's sake. What are the applications in the LAN? What requires priority? What's moving across the WAN, and really who's accessing those apps? And that discussion right there, we all of a sudden subconsciously we're starting to have a cloud discussion, and that's very different than saying, hey, do you want to talk about cloud? All of a sudden we're talking about, how are we going to design an SD-WAN solution to meet the technology demands and the impact positively the end user experience. That right there is starting to become a cloud discussion, and we can, as I mentioned earlier, that might lead into, hey, we've got either employees that are working within the four walls, or most likely the case today outside of the four walls. It leads to multi-factor security type discussions. It could mean to device as a service type discussions. It could lead to potentially even desktop discussions or disaster recovery and backup discussions. Or is the infrastructure protected correctly? And then the opportunity that you're working can get much more comprehensive. We were looking at some data yesterday, and when we bring on a customer and look at the initial ARPU in a deal. Average revenue per user, if you are per customer, within the first 12 months, that deal is doubling, and that's simply because it's cloud, it's consumption, sure, but it's our account management team working with our partners to go back to that customer and really understand, hey, how are they really leveraging IT, and SD-WAN's presented an opportunity. It's no longer just about, hey, how big is the pipe and what are the locations and how can I lower your cost. It's really about how can we optimize the end user experience, right? And I think that is a great gateway into cloud.
Yeah, I just would add one thing as we're getting close to wrapping up here, Bob, is if everyone would consider or agree that RapidScale is an expert in delivering applications to the businesses and end users out there, and SD-WAN was defined and created as a way to improve the application experience,
exactly,
then it just makes sense that we would be the choice for your customers' SD-WAN needs.
Awesome. And we have a couple more minutes, so I'll ask one more question.
Perfect.
Why do you think so many customers still lean towards Cisco Meraki? Just trying to get a better understanding of how to talk against that more and more for SD-WAN.
I'll try to take a stab at that. We actually rep Meraki's in different scenarios, typically not in SD-WAN though. So Meraki was an acquisition by Cisco. It is very, very user-friendly from an IT sysadmin perspective. It's very wizard-driven, all UI-driven, and frankly, the products work pretty well together when it's an entirely Meraki environment. And again, Cisco being an 800-pound gorilla, they've got feet on the street in every major market, globally. So obviously they're good at selling. So I think you're kind of dealing with many decades of Cisco being the leader in the networking space. But I think not to quote from the Magic Quadrant, but to go back to that, is you can see that they're not number one and they're not number two in the space. And I think a reputable IT leader will recognize that maybe Cisco's the easy button, but it's not the best choice.
Awesome, thanks, Dwayne. I think we should be good. Thank you, Bob.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. This has been great. We went 3 minutes over. Pride ourselves on being conscious of your time. Thanks for sticking with us today. Hope it was of value. Look forward to getting into more SD-WAN opportunities and getting out there competing and helping your customers meet their needs. And with that, session will complete. Have a happy selling and have the great remainder of the day.